The Romance of the Water Lily by William Wordsworth. While Merlin paced the Cornish sands, forth looking toward the rocks of Scilly, the pleased enchanter was aware of a bright ship that seemed to hang in air, yet was she work of mortal hands, and took from men her name, the Water Lily. Soft was the wind, that landward blew, and, as the moon, o'er some dark hill, ascendant, grows from a little edge of light to a full orb, this Pinnace bright became, as nearer to the coast she drew, more glorious, with spread sail and streaming pendant. Upon this winged shape so fair sage Merlin gazed with admiration. Her lineaments, thought he, surpass aught that was ever shown in magic glass, was ever built with patient care, or, at a touch, produced by happiest transformation. Now, though a Mechanist, whose skill shames the degenerate grasp of modern science, grave Merlin, and belike the more for practicing occult and perilous lore, was subject to a freakish will that sapped good thoughts, or scared them with defiance. Provoked to envious spleen, he cast an altered look upon the advancing stranger whom he had hailed with joy, and cried, "My art shall help to tame her pride." Anon the breeze became a blast, and the waves rose, and sky portended danger. With thrilling word, and potent sign traced on the beach, his work the sorcerer urges. The clouds in blacker clouds are lost, like spiteful fiends that vanish, crossed by fiends of aspect more malign. And the winds roused the deep with fiercer scourges. But worthy of the name she bore was this sea flower, this buoyant galley, supreme in loveliness and grace of motion, whether in the embrace of trusty anchorage, or scudding o'er the main flood roughened into hill and valley. Behold, how wantonly she laves her sides, the wizard's craft confounding, like something out of ocean sprung to be forever fresh and young, breasts the sea flashes, and huge waves top gallant high, rebounding and rebounding. But ocean under magic heaves, and cannot spare the thing he cherished. Ah! What avails that she was fair, luminous, blithe, and debonair? The storm has stripped her of her leaves, the lily floats no longer. She hath perished. Grieve for her, she deserves no less. So like, yet so unlike, a living creature. No heart had she, no busy brain. Though loved, she could not love again. Though pitied, feel her own distress, nor aught that troubles us, the fools of nature. Yet is there cause for gushing tears, so richly was this galley laden, a fairer than herself she bore, and, in her struggles, cast ashore. A lovely one, who nothing hears of wind or wave, a meek and guileless maiden. Into a cave had Merlin fled from mischief, caused by spells himself had muttered. And while, repentant all too late, in moody posture there he sat, he heard a voice, and saw, with half-raised head, a visitant by whom these words were uttered. On Christian service this frail bark sailed, hear me, Merlin, under high protection, though on her prow a sign of heathen power was carved a goddess with a lily flower, the old Egyptians' emblematic mark of joy immortal and of pure affection. Her course was for the British strand. Her freight, it was a damsel peerless. God reigns above, and spirits strong may gather to avenge this wrong done to the princess, and her land which she in duty left, sad but not cheerless. And to Caerleon's loftiest tower soon will the knights of Arthur's table a cry of lamentation send, and all will weep who there attend, to grace that stranger's bridal hour, for whom the sea was made unnavigable. Shame! Should a child of royal line die through the blindness of thy malice? Thus to the necromancer spake Nina, the lady of the lake, a gentle sorceress, and benign, who ne'er embittered any good man's chalice. What boots, continued she, to mourn, to expiate thy sin endeavor, from the bleak isle where she is laid, fetched by our art, the Egyptian maid may yet to Arthur's court be borne cold as she is, ere life be fled for ever. My pearly boat, a shining light, that brought me down that sunless river, will bear me on from wave to wave, and back with her to this sea cave. Then Merlin, for a rapid flight through air, to thee my charge will I deliver. The very swiftest of thy cars must, when my part is done, be ready. Meanwhile, for further guidance, look into thy own prophetic book, and, if that fail, consult the stars to learn thy course. Farewell. Be prompt and steady. This scarcely spoken, she again was seated in her gleaming shallop, that, o'er the yet distempered deep, pursued its way with bird-like sweep, or like a steed, without a rein, urged o'er the wilderness in sportive gallop. Soon did the gentle Nina reach that isle, without a house or haven. Landing, she found not what she sought, nor saw of wreck or ruin aught but a carved lotus cast upon the beach by the fierce waves, a flower in marble graven. Sad relic, but how fair the while! for gently each from each retreating with backward curve, the leaves revealed the bosom half, and half concealed, of a divinity, that seemed to smile on Nina, as she passed, with hopeful greeting. No quest was hers of vague desire, of tortured hope and purpose shaken. Following the margin of a bay, she spied the lonely castaway, unmarred, unstripped of her attire, but with closed eyes, of breath and bloom forsaken. Then Nina, stooping down, embraced, with tenderness and mild emotion, the damsel, in that trance bound. And, while she raised her from the ground, and in the pearly shallop placed, sleep fell upon the air, and stilled the ocean. The turmoil hushed, celestial springs of music opened, and there came a blending of fragrance, underived from earth, with gleams that owed not to the sun their birth, and that soft rustling of invisible wings which angels make on works of love descending. And Nina heard a sweeter voice than if the goddess of the flower had spoken. Thou hast achieved, fair dame, what none less pure in spirit could have done. Go, in thy enterprise rejoice. Air, earth, sea, sky, and heaven, success betoken. So cheered, she left that island bleak, a bare rock of the Scilly cluster, and, as they traversed the smooth brine, the self-illumined brigantine shed, on the slumberer's cold wan cheek and pallid brow, a melancholy luster. Fleet was their course, and when they came to the dim cavern, whence the river issued into the salt sea flood, Merlin, as fixed in thought he stood, was thus accosted by the dame. Behold, to thee my charge I now deliver. But where attends thy chariot? Where? Quoth Merlin, even as I was bidden, so have I done. As trusty as thy barge my vehicle shall prove, O precious charge. If this be sleep, how soft. If death, how fair. Much have my books disclosed, but the end is hidden. He spake, and gliding into view forth from the grotto's dimmest chamber came two mute swans, whose plumes of dusky white changed, as the pair approached the light, drawing an ebon car, their hue, like clouds of sunset, into lucid amber. Once more did gentle Nina lift the princess, passive to all changes. The car received her. Then up went into the ethereal element the birds with progress smooth and swift as thought, when through bright regions memory ranges. Sage Merlin, at the slumberer's side, instructs the swans their way to measure, and soon Caerleon's towers appeared, and notes of minstrelsy were heard from rich pavilions spreading wide, for some high day of long-expected pleasure. Awe-stricken stood both knights and dames ere on firm ground the car alighted. Eftsoon's astonishment was past, for in that face they saw the last lingering look of clay, that tames all pride, by which all happiness is blighted. Said Merlin, mighty king, fair lords, away with feast and tilt and tourney. Ye saw, throughout this royal house, ye heard, a rocking marvellous of turrets, and a clash of swords self-shaken, as I closed my airy journey. Lo! By a destiny well known to mortals, joy is turned to sorrow. This is the wished-for bride, the maid of Egypt, from a rock conveyed where she by shipwreck had been thrown, ill sight. But grief may vanish ere the morrow. Though vast thy power, thy words are weak, exclaimed the king, a mockery hateful. Dutiful child, her lot how hard. Is this her piety's reward? Those watery locks, that bloodless cheek. O winds! Without remorse. O shore ungrateful! Rich robes are fretted by the moth. Towers, temples, fall by stroke of thunder. Will that, or deeper thoughts, abate a father's sorrow for her fate? He will repent him of his troth. His brain will burn, his stout heart split asunder. Alas! And I have caused this woe. For, when my prowess from invading neighbors had freed his realm, he plighted word that he would turn to Christ our Lord, and his dear daughter on a knight bestow whom I should choose for love and matchless labors. Her birth was heathen, but a fence of holy angels round her hovered. A lady added to my court so fair, of such divine report and worship, seemed a recompense for 50 kingdoms by my sword recovered. Ask not, for whom, O champions true, she was reserved by me her life's betrayer. She who was meant to be a bride is now a corpse. Then put aside vain thoughts, and speed ye, with observance due of Christian rites, in Christian ground to lay her. The tomb, said Merlin, may not close upon her yet, earth hide her beauty. Not froward to thy sovereign will esteem me, liege. If I, whose skill wafted her hither, interpose to check this pious haste of erring duty. My books command me to lay bare the secret thou art bent on keeping. Here must a high attest be given, what bridegroom was for her ordained by heaven. And in my glass significance there are of things that may to gladness turn this weeping. For this, approaching, one by one, Thy knights must touch the cold hand of the Virgin. So, for the favored one, the flower may bloom once more. But, if unchangeable her doom, if life departed be forever gone, some blessed assurance, from this cloud emerging, may teach him to bewail his loss, not with a grief that, like a vapor, rises and melts, but grief devout that shall endure, and a perpetual growth. Secure of purposes which no false thought shall cross, a harvest of high hopes and noble enterprises. So be it, said the king. Anon, here, where the princess lies, begin the trial. Knights each in order as ye stand step forth. To touch the pallid hand Sir Agravain advanced. No sign he won from heaven or earth. Sir Kay had like denial. Abashed, Sir Dinas turned away. Even for Sir Percival was no disclosure, though he, devoutest of all champions, ere he reached that Aben car, the bier whereon diffused like snow the damsel lay, full thrice had crossed himself in meek composure. Imagine, but ye saints, who can, how in still air the balance trembled the wishes, peradventure the despites that overcame some not ungenerous knights, and all the thoughts that lengthened out a span of time to lords and ladies thus assembled. What patient confidence was here, and there how many bosoms panted, while drawing toward the car Sir Gawain, mailed for tournament, his beaver veiled, and softly touched, but, to his princely cheer and high expectancy, no sign was granted. Next, disencumbered of his harp, Sir Tristram, dear to thousands as a brother, came to the proof, nor grieved that there ensued no change. The fair Isonde he had wooed with love too true, a love with pangs too sharp, from hope too distant, not to dread another. Not so Sir Lancelot, from heaven's grace a sign he craved, tired slave of vain contrition. The royal Guinevere looked passing glad when his touch failed. Next came Sir Galahad. He paused, and stood entranced by that still face whose features he had seen in noontide vision. For late, as near a murmuring stream he rested, mid an arbor green and shady. Nina, the good enchantress, shed a light around his mossy bed, and, at her call, a waking dream prefigured to his sense the Egyptian lady. Now, while his bright-haired front he bowed, and stood, far kenned by mantle furred with ermine, as o'er the insensate body hung the enwrapped, the beautiful, the young, belief sank deep into the crowd that he the solemn issue would determine. Nor deem it strange. The youth had worn that very mantle on a day of glory, the day when he achieved that matchless feat, the marvel of the perilous seat, which whosoe'er approached of strength was shorn, though king or knight the most renowned in story. He touched with hesitating hand, and lo, those birds, far famed through love's dominions, the swans, in triumph clapped their wings, and their necks play, involved in rings, like sinless snakes in Eden's happy land. Mine is she, cried the knight. Again they clapped their pinions. Mine was she, mine she is, though dead, and to her name my soul shall cleave in sorrow. Whereat, a tender twilight streak of color dawned upon the damsel's cheek, and her lips, quickening with uncertain red, seemed from each other a faint warmth to borrow. Deep was the awe, the rapture high, of love emboldened, hope with dread entwining, when, to the mouth, relenting death allowed a soft and flower-like breath, precursor to a timid sigh, to lifted eyelids, and a doubtful shining. In silence did King Arthur gaze upon the signs that pass away or tarry. In silence watched the gentle strife of nature leading back to life. Then eased his soul at length by praise of God, and heaven's pure Queen, the blissful Mary. Then said he, take her to thy heart, Sir Galahad. A treasure, that God giveth, bound by indissoluble ties to thee through mortal change and immortality. Be happy and unenvied, thou who art a goodly knight that hath no peer that liveth. Not long the nuptials were delayed, and sage tradition still rehearses the pomp, the glory of that hour when toward the altar from her bower King Arthur led the Egyptian maid, and angels caroled these far-echoed verses. Who shrinks not from alliance of evil with good powers, to God proclaims defiance, and mocks whom he adores. A ship to Christ devoted from the land of Nile did go, alas! The bright ship floated, an idol at her prow. By magic domination, the heaven-permitted vent of purblind mortal passion, was wrought her punishment. The flower the form within it, what served they in her need? Her port she could not win it, nor from mishap be freed. The tempest overcame her, and she was seen no more. But gently, gently blame her, she cast a pearl ashore. The maid to Jesu hearkened, and kept to him her faith, till sense in death was darkened, or sleep akin to death. But angels round her pillow kept watch, a viewless band, and, billow favoring billow, she reached the destined strand. Blessed pair, Whate'er befall you, your faith in him approve, who from frail earth can call you to bowers of endless love.